You're mid-conversation with someone. Nothing special is happening. Maybe you're talking about weekend plans or where to eat, and then it hits you. Not a thought, a sensation. You've said this exact sentence before. This exact person in this exact spot with this exact light coming through the window. You know what they're about to say next. And for about 2 seconds, the room feels less like the present and more like a rerun you forgot you'd already watched. Then it's gone. You try to hold on to it, to figure out where you've been here before, and it just dissolves.
Like trying to remember a dream after you're already brushing your teeth. So what actually happened there? Did your brain just glitch? Did you actually see this moment before somehow? Is this your brain making a mistake or catching one? And why does it always vanish the second you try to look directly at it? Before we go further, this isn't about past lives, parallel universes, or your soul remembering something from another timeline. We're looking at what your brain is actually doing in that 2-second window. And the real answer turns out to be far stranger than any of
the mystical explanations. Because for most of the last century, scientists assumed deja vu was some kind of memory malfunction. A wire crossed, a file misfiled, your brain accidentally tagging something new as something old. The newest research says that's backwards. Deja vu isn't your brain making a mistake. It's your brain catching one. Neuroscientist Akira O'Connor, who spent years studying this experience directly, found something almost the opposite of the popular theory. The unsettling feeling isn't the false memory itself. It's your frontal lobes noticing that a memory doesn't add up, flagging the error and correcting it in real time, before you've even consciously registered what's wrong. What you're feeling in that moment isn't a malfunction. It's a fact check, a system built to catch your brain lying to you, working exactly as intended. Which raises a much stranger question than, why does this happen to me? If deja vu is your brain correcting itself, what does it actually look like when that correction succeeds? And what happens to people when it doesn't? Let's actually sit with that idea for a second, because memory conflict is a very different thing from false familiarity. Familiarity is simple. Your brain just says, I recognize this. Conflict is something else entirely. It means two systems in your brain are disagreeing with each other in real time. One system, the one handling your raw perception, is telling you, this is new, you've never been here. Another system, the one responsible for recognition, is telling you, this is familiar, you've done this before. Deja vu is the split second where those two signals collide, and what you're actually feeling isn't the false memory, it's the collision itself. And here's the part that made this theory testable instead of just theoretical. Scientists figured out how to manufacture that exact collision on command, in a lab, inside an MRI machine. The trick is almost embarrassingly simple. You show someone a cluster of related words: wet, snow, winter, ice, freeze. Every single one circling around a word that never actually appears: cold. The brain, primed by all those associations, becomes convinced it saw the word cold, even though it didn't. That false certainty, that unshakable sense of, I know I've seen this, is deja vu.
In miniature. And because researchers can trigger it whenever they want, they can now watch it happen in real time, brain scan running, instead of just waiting for it to happen naturally and asking people to describe it afterward. But word tricks are one thing. What's stranger is that your brain doesn't even need language to fall for this. It turns out deja vu can be built out of pure geometry. In one experiment, researchers put people into virtual reality and showed them scenes that were spatially arranged just like scenes they'd seen earlier. Same layout, same relative positions of walls and furniture and doorways, but completely different content. People reported that unmistakable I've been here before feeling for spaces they'd never actually seen, and they couldn't consciously recall the original layout at all. This is almost certainly the explanation behind that oddly specific experience of walking into a hotel room in a city you've never visited and feeling like you already know where the bathroom is. Not mysticism, floor plans. Now, here's where it stops being something researchers can only study indirectly and becomes something they can literally switch on. In patients undergoing brain surgery, doctors have used implanted electrodes to directly stimulate a region called the rhinal cortex, and doing so reliably produces the déjà vu sensation on command. That might sound like a small detail, but it's actually one of the rarest things in all of neuroscience. Most electrical brain stimulation produces something mechanical, a twitch in a finger, a flash of light that isn't really there, a phantom smell. Déjà vu is one of the only full, complex, subjective experiences, an entire emotional and cognitive state that scientists can reliably switch on with a single electrode. Push a button, feel like you've lived this moment before. And when researchers looked closer at what was happening in the brain during these induced episodes, they found something even stranger. Déjà vu isn't just a region misfiring. It has a rhythm. During induced déjà vu, there's a measurable spike in communication between the rhinal cortex and the hippocampus, specifically in the theta brainwave band, alongside an increase in the beta band. Two brain regions suddenly start talking to each other in a very specific frequency, almost like a signature. It's not noise. It's closer to a fingerprint, a distinct, repeatable pattern that shows up only when this exact experience is happening and disappears the moment it's over. There's also a chemical fingerprint. The temporal lobe structures generating that false familiarity signal happen to be dense with dopamine pathways, which explains something a lot of people notice but never think to question. Certain drugs, prescription and recreational alike, measurably increase how often people experience déjà vu. Turn up the dopamine, turn up the misfires. And this is where the story stops being quirky trivia and starts getting genuinely uncomfortable. Because the entorhinal cortex, the exact region implicated in déjà vu, isn't exclusive to déjà vu at all. It's the same structure implicated in Alzheimer's disease and in schizophrenia. Researchers studying how this region generates a false sense of familiarity now believe the same mechanism may help explain how schizophrenic delusions form in the first place. A false certainty that isn't corrected, that just keeps winning. A completely ordinary, harmless experience that almost everyone has had, sitting on the exact same neural real estate as a serious clinical condition. Which brings us to something that should be more surprising than it initially sounds. Déjà vu actually gets rarer as people get older. If it were simply a memory glitch, that shouldn't happen. Older brains carrying more memories, more overlapping experiences, more opportunity for signals to cross should misfire more often, not less. But the conflict detection theory predicts exactly the opposite of what a glitch theory would predict. And it's exactly what shows up in the data. The fact-checking activity in the frontal lobes, the system responsible for catching the error in the first place, gets weaker with age. Younger brains catch the contradiction. Older brains, more often, just let it slide. Which means déjà vu isn't a sign your memory is breaking down. It's a sign your memory's error correction system is switched on and working. The real question is what happens to people when it isn't. For most people, that's the end of the story. A strange 2-second feeling, correctly caught and corrected, filed away as nothing. But there's a version of this where the correction never happens. It's called déjà vécu, and it shows up most often in people with dementia. It isn't a fleeting sensation you shrug off. It's a false certainty that simply wins. People with déjà vécu don't just feel like they've been somewhere before, they become convinced they've already lived through an entire event, and they act on that belief. In severe cases, people refuse to watch new TV shows or pick up new books, genuinely certain they've already seen every episode, already read every page. Every new conversation arrives feeling like a rerun they're bored of. The difference between what happens to you in that hallway and what happens to someone with déjà vu isn't the false signal itself. Everyone's brain occasionally fires that signal. The difference is whether the correction step completes. In a healthy brain, the false familiarity shows up, gets flagged, and loses to reality within a couple of seconds. In déjà vu, that fact checker never finishes the job, and the false memory just stands. Which means that feeling you had, mid-sentence, mid-conversation, convinced you'd already lived this exact moment, wasn't a glitch at all. It was your brain catching itself in a
lie and fixing it before you even knew there was one to catch. 2 seconds of a system built to protect you from your own memory, working exactly the way it's supposed to. The unsettling part was never the false memory. It was proof your brain checks its own work.